Hi, my name is Horace Keith Jr. Moo-Young III, and today I'm here to ask you, do you think society would change if prisoners could vote? Do you think the presidential election would be biased if the polls would change? Yes, I do believe so, and I'm here to convince you why. Can I ask you, do you even know what the right to vote is? The right to vote is a right according to law is entitled to everyone once you have reached the legal age of 18. But what happens when you break the law and when the law has been broken and has the right to vote have been forfeited to you? Let me give you a scenario. You're 18 years old and you're with your friends in a car and you're about to go to a party. I know everyone here has been to a party some point in their lifetime. You get pulled over by a cop and he is now searching the vehicle. He finds a little baggie of weed. In your mind, you're saying to yourself, it's not mine. I'm not going to jail. But all of a sudden, every person in the car is arrested for possession of marijuana. Now you're saying, dang, it's okay. I'm not going to jail. But since marijuana is illegal in that state you are now under arrest. Then you go up to the judge, and the judge says you have life in prison for only a little baggie of weed. Confusing, right? The history of our nation is fought with battles over people's rights, and the right to vote is foremost among them. The right to vote, but linked to many other significant rights and principles, such as equality and justice. It should not be denied to eligible citizens, including those who have infringed on the rights of others. As extreme as our rate of incarceration is in the United States, so too are felony disenfranchisement laws by the standards of comparable nations. As of 2016, an estimated of 6.1 million people were denied the right to vote due to current or previous felony of conviction. Of this total of 1.3 million were incarcerated in state or federal prisons. Back to the scenario in which I was talking about before. The incident has actually happened in my life to a pretty close family member of mine. One of my cousins, who was a four-star football player at the time and one of the top players in his class, actually dealt with this situation. He was in the car with his so-called homeboys on their way to a party on a Saturday evening. He never did drugs, he stayed away from alcohol. Nevertheless, I'm going to keep his name out of this speech. But basically, what ended up happening to him, a cop pulled him over, and since one of his homeboys had a little bag of marijuana in the state of Arizona, all the people in the car were convicted for having possession of marijuana. And since he was 18, they charged him as an adult and almost gave him life in prison. It sucks because he had everything going on for him. He was a four-star athlete, had 30 plus offers, and his life was basically ruined by hopping in the car and going to a party with his so-called homeboys. Sucks, right? A prisoner voice matters. Prisoners should be allowed the right to vote, as the right is crucial to our classification as a democracy. The primary argument denying prisoners the right are based on overgeneralization. It's crazy that 1 out of 44 adults, 2.27% of the total US voting eligible population, is disenfranchised due to current or previous felony convictions. Felons are still part of society and do engage in the democratic process. If laws are changed affecting the court system, this very well could impact their lives. The other point is this is one of many ways that lawmakers, in particular members of the Republican Party, have tried to disenfranchise voters. According to the Constitution, the 14th Amendment grants to the states the authority to deny voting rights for anyone that has convicted a crime. On paper, this does seem pretty valid. If you break the law, things that at one time you were entitled to are now no longer allowed. Now that we have explained that felons are still a part of society, let's talk about how the prison system is basically like slavery, and nobody really talks about it. Did you know that they make 12 cents to 33 cents an hour? Many prisoners are racial minorities or people who live in urban areas, which means these places lose voting population, which more conservative areas gain non voting population. 1 in 16 African Americans of voting age is disenfranchised at a rate 3.7 times greater than that of non African Americans. Over 6.2% of the adult African American population is disenfranchised compared to 1.7% of the non African American population. Remember something you learned in high school, maybe in middle school, was called the war on drugs? If you're not familiar with the topic, I would recommend the show called Snowfall. It's on FX and also on Netflix. Back to the topic. When you look at war on drugs, many of the convicted felons happen to be minorities. And when voter turnout is low, it does favor the Republican Party. All of one needs to do this midterm elections of 2014, where voter turnout was the lowest since World War II. And there is a pretty solid data that the majority of voters from minority background do vote liberal. The right to vote defines our nation as a democracy and should be afforded to all citizens. The denial of this right is to any citizen, prisoners included, can lead to a dangerous slippery slope in terms of consequences. We do not deny prisoners the right to free of speech or religion, nor do we deny them of equal justice. We should restrict only the rights that in our imperfect justice system is necessary to ensure a just and functional democracy. If we take from a citizen the right his or voice heard without harm to any other, what other infringements can we justify? In conclusion, prisoners should have the right to vote. Prisoners should have the right to vote because it is fundamental to a democracy. People are incarcerated for vastly different circumstances that undermine a generalized approach, and every citizen's voice matters. We must stick by these principles or we fail ourselves and reject our own rights. Democracy is based on the equal rights for all citizens: freedom of speech and religion, the right to a fair trial, the right to privacy, among others. On the other hand, does someone who has infringed on others' rights deserve the privilege to be participating, a member of a Democratic Party? That is the crucial question in this discussion about voting for felons. Not all crimes have the same injurious act, which is why specific categories of prisoners might retain their rights, including the right to vote. Thank you.